feelings of shame to specific behaviors, desires, or expressions of self, so that every time you try to act freely, you're pulled back by the invisible weight of humiliation. It's not just about making you feel bad in the moment, it's about planting shame like a hook inside your psyche, so that it drags you down again and again, long after the words were said. The manipulator uses your vulnerabilities against you, things you care about, things you're proud of, or even things you've never dared to share. Maybe you opened up about a passion, a struggle, a part of yourself that felt fragile, and instead of meeting it with support, they smirked, rolled their eyes, or delivered a cutting remark. That's so childish. No one wants to hear about your problems all the time. Why would you even think that's impressive? They anchor shame to the moment, to you, and you feel it, the sinking hot flush of embarrassment. You may laugh it off, change the subject, tell yourself they didn't mean it, but the damage is already done, because the next time you try to express that part of yourself, a voice inside whispers, "Don't. Remember how stupid you looked?" And you freeze. That's the power of shame anchoring. It doesn't require repetition. It requires precision. One well-timed jab, delivered in a moment of vulnerability, and the emotional reflex is installed. And once it's there, the manipulator doesn't have to shame you anymore. You'll do it yourself. You'll silence your own voice, hide your own joy, choke down your own opinions. This tactic is especially cruel because it often comes cloaked in humor or honesty. They'll say, "I'm just being real," or "Can't you take a joke?" So if you confront them, you seem oversensitive, and the shame doubles. Eventually, you stop sharing, you stop shining, you shrink, not because someone broke you loudly, but because they anchored shame to the parts of you that once felt alive. And now, even freedom feels dangerous, not because it is, but because someone taught you it should. Selective memory manipulation. Selective memory manipulation is a deeply deceptive psychological tactic where the manipulator intentionally remembers only certain parts of events, specifically the ones that serve their narrative, while conveniently forgetting everything else. It's not about memory lapses. It's about rewriting reality to control perception, avoid accountability, and make you question your own recollection. And over time, it doesn't just distort what happened, it distorts who you think you are. The manipulator cherry picks moments that benefit them. They remember every favor they did for you, but none of the ones you did for them. They recall your outbursts, but never the weeks of provocation that led to them. They hold on to one mistake you made, but forget the countless times they hurt you. They treat partial truths like the whole story, and every time you try to fill in the blanks, you're met with denial, deflection, or a smug, "That's not how I remember it." This tactic is gaslighting in disguise. It doesn't flat out deny your reality. It edits it, just enough to plant doubt. You start replaying moments in your head, wondering if you're overreacting, misremembering, being unfair. But you're not. You're being rewritten by someone who wants to control the narrative more than they want to be honest. In arguments, selective memory manipulation becomes a weapon of silence and omission. They recall things that make them look like the victim and leave out everything that makes them look accountable. They'll say, "I never raised my voice," even though they did, but just not when anyone else was around. They'll insist you always twist things, as they twist the timeline, the tone, the truth. Over time, this manipulation causes internal erosion. You begin to doubt your emotional instincts. You hesitate before bringing up valid concerns because you're not sure if you even remember things correctly. And that hesitation is the manipulator's victory, because if you can't trust your own memory, you start relying on theirs. You hand over your reality like a weapon, and they use it to control the story of you. What you're left with isn't just confusion, it's an identity crisis, because if they get to decide what happened, they get to decide who you were in that moment, and little by little, your truth gets replaced by their fiction, until even you aren't sure which version is real anymore. Unpredictable reward system. The unpredictable reward system is a manipulation technique that operates like emotional gambling. It keeps you trapped in a cycle of confusion, craving, and desperation by offering praise, affection, or approval inconsistently and unpredictably. One moment you're adored, the next you're ignored, then suddenly they're warm again, just long enough to make you stay, to make you hope, to make you chase. This tactic isn't about love, it's about control, and it works by turning your nervous system into a slot machine. In the early stages, the manipulator showers you with attention, texting constantly, complimenting you, showing affection so intensely that it feels euphoric. It hooks you, but then, without warning, they pull away. They stop responding. They act distant, cold, distracted. You panic. What did I do?
Prošli vrijeme ne
Did I
izgubim
upset
partiju za
them?
lece u
Did I
vodu,
change?
ništa,
The
izađi,
silence
gotovo, ne
hurts,
moram ništa
but
ni
just
dobiti.
as you start pulling back or questioning the relationship, they return.
Jo,
Affectionate,
jebem ti sunce
reassuring,
laptop.
maybe even apologetic. And in that moment, the relief you feel floods your system with dopamine, not just joy, relief. That hit is more powerful than steady love because it comes after pain, and now you're addicted, not to them, but to the chase, the uncertainty, the pattern you're desperate to crack. You begin to work harder to please them. You silence your needs to avoid pushing them away. You analyze every word, every look, every moment, searching for clues on how to earn the reward again. And they give it, just enough to keep the hope alive, but never enough to feel secure. This is how the unpredictable reward system creates emotional dependence. The inconsistency is the trap. If they treated you badly all the time, you'd leave. If they treated you well all the time, you'd relax. But by mixing cruelty with kindness, they keep your emotions unstable and your focus entirely on them. You start blaming yourself for their distance. You start rewarding them for hurting you just because they stopped. And over time, you forget what real love feels like. You forget that peace shouldn't feel like winning a game you were never meant to play. Phantom norms. Phantom norms are unspoken, invisible rules that a manipulator invents and enforces as if they were universally understood and morally unquestionable. But they're not. They are artificial expectations disguised as common sense. You never agreed to them. You were never told them outright. But when you break one, you're punished as if you've committed a serious betrayal. This tactic doesn't just control your actions, it reprograms your reality. The manipulator uses phantom norms to shape your behavior without your consent. They imply standards you should already know. Everyone knows you don't do that. I shouldn't have to explain this to you. That's just basic respect. But when you stop and think about it, nothing about these rules was ever mutual, explicit, or fair. They're vague, shifting, and entirely in the manipulator's favor. Maybe you didn't respond to a text fast enough. Maybe you didn't invite them to something you didn't even think they'd care about. Suddenly, you're being cold-shouldered, guilt-tripped, or accused of being selfish. You try to defend yourself, but the more you explain, the worse it gets. Because this isn't about what's right or wrong. It's about enforcing a rule you didn't know existed until you broke it. This tactic creates a constant sense of walking on eggshells. You start overthinking every move, not because you've done something wrong, but because you're terrified of breaking another invisible rule. You lose spontaneity, authenticity, and confidence. You become hypervigilant, scanning for clues about what's acceptable, trying to stay on the manipulator's good side without ever knowing the criteria. Phantom norms also breed guilt and shame. You internalize the idea that you're somehow failing, socially, emotionally, or morally, because someone keeps reacting to you like you should have known better. But the truth is, you're not failing. You're being played. These rules aren't universal. They're custom designed to control you, to keep you off balance, obedient, and apologizing for things you never agreed were wrong in the first place. What makes phantom norms so devastating is their invisibility. There's no clear boundary to push back against, just the constant, unspoken threat that you'll be judged, shamed, or discarded if you don't keep playing by rules that only one person knows, and that person changes them whenever it suits their agenda. Echoic Agreement Trap. The echoic agreement trap is a manipulative tactic that disguises control as agreement. It works by mirroring your thoughts, values, dreams, or frustrations so convincingly that you believe you finally found someone who truly understands you. But what feels like deep emotional resonance is actually a performance designed to lower your defenses, earn your trust, and set the stage for later exploitation. At first, it's intoxicating. You express something vulnerable, your fears about love, your childhood wounds, your dreams of freedom, and they echo it back with uncanny precision. I've always felt that too. It's like you're saying everything I've been thinking. No one else has ever understood
Ne može,
the way
znači
you do.
debil
You feel
neki.
seen,
Bog te
understood,
maze.
safe. You drop your guard and open up more.
Nemoj
And every
pokazivati,
time you
Bog
do,
te
they
mazo. Pa
reflect
dobar
your thoughts
početak,
right
Bog
back to
te.
you like a mirror, saying exactly what you need to hear. It's not a conversation. It's an emotional seduction. But here's the trap. The agreement isn't real. It's tactical. The manipulator isn't revealing their truth. They're collecting yours. They're memorizing your values, language, and emotional patterns to gain influence over you later. Because when someone mirrors your mind, your brain interprets that as trustworthiness, as truth. And when they've gained that trust, the shift begins. Suddenly, the agreement starts to waver, but gently. You're questioned, corrected, subtly redirected. You've already bonded with them so deeply, you assume you must be the one misunderstanding. And so, you start adjusting. You start conforming. You begin to follow their values, thinking they were yours all along. This tactic is common in toxic relationships, cults, manipulative friendships, and abusive dynamics. It doesn't begin with domination. It begins with echoes. And once you hear your own voice coming out of their mouth, you stop protecting it. You hand it over willingly. The echoic agreement trap doesn't steal your identity outright. It gets you to share it, piece by piece, until you look in the mirror one day and see someone else's reflection smiling back. False scarcity illusion. False scarcity. Illusion is a psychological manipulation tactic that creates the illusion that something, love, opportunity, attention, time, is extremely limited, even when it's not, in order to pressure you into action, compliance, or emotional dependence. It hijacks your survival instincts, triggering urgency, fear of loss, and a desperate need to secure your spot before it's too late. But the scarcity isn't real. It's manufactured to make you feel replaceable, rushed, and not good enough. The manipulator might hint that they're always in high demand. Other people would kill to be with me. You're lucky I chose you. This is a one-time chance. They subtly suggest you could lose them at any moment, or that others are lining up to take your place. Romantically, professionally, emotionally, you start believing you have to earn what they're offering. You become afraid to make mistakes. You start chasing validation, terrified that if you don't act fast or stay perfect, someone else will take what you thought was yours. This illusion works because it targets your deepest insecurities. It makes you feel like what you want is just out of reach, and that you must compete to keep it. It reframes love, attention, and opportunity as something you're lucky to receive, not something you deserve. You forget your worth. You start hustling for affection, walking on eggshells, and accepting treatment that you would never tolerate if you weren't so afraid of losing what little you believe you're being offered. False scarcity is used in romantic manipulation, especially by narcissists, to keep partners compliant. It's used in toxic work cultures where employees are told jobs like this don't come around often. It's used in marketing, cult recruitment, and abusive friendships. It doesn't matter if what they're offering is actually valuable. What matters is that you believe it's rare. But here's the dark truth. The scarcity is a setup. The manipulator often dangles the same offer in front of others. The urgency is theater. They never intended to walk away. They just wanted to see how far you'd go to keep them. And by the time you realize there was never any shortage, you've already overinvested, emotionally, financially, physically, trying to hold on to something that was never going anywhere. Because it wasn't love or opportunity, it was leverage, wrapped in fear, powered by illusion. Tactical praise withdrawal. Tactical praise withdrawal is a psychological manipulation tactic where affection, approval, and validation are given early and generously, only to be suddenly and strategically taken away. It creates a silent emotional vacuum that leaves you scrambling to earn back what you once received freely. The praise becomes a drug, and its absence, withdrawal. At first, the praise is intoxicating. You're told how brilliant, beautiful, strong, or rare you are. Every gesture you make is met with admiration. You feel chosen, elevated, seen in a way that feels almost spiritual. This stage isn't accidental, it's the setup. The manipulator builds you up, not to celebrate you, but to create a high they can later control. Then, just as suddenly, the praise stops, not in anger, but in silence. Things that once earned you affection now earn you nothing. No smile, no compliments, no affirmation. You feel a shift, and your nervous system panics. Did you do something wrong? Did you change? What do they see now that they didn't before? That's the trap. The withdrawal isn't an accident. It's deliberate. It's designed to create insecurity, make you question yourself, and trigger a desperate effort to regain the manipulator's approval. You try harder. You apologize for things you didn't do. You begin molding yourself into whatever version of you they seem to like before. Not because you want to, but because you need to feel loved again. What makes this tactic so dangerous is that the praise will return, but only in small, unpredictable doses, just enough to hook you again, to reward your compliance. And then, once you're stable, it vanishes again. This cycle creates an emotional dependence that feels exactly like addiction. The longer the withdrawal lasts, the more euphoric the praise feels when it finally returns. You don't realize you're being trained, conditioned to associate their approval with your worth. And by the time you do, you've already given up parts of yourself to get it back. Tactical praise withdrawal isn't about love, it's about power. It's not just what they give, it's what they take away and how desperately they make you miss it. Distorted reciprocity. Distorted reciprocity is a psychological manipulation tactic that twists the natural give and take of human relationships into a weapon. It takes the beautiful human instinct to return kindness and warps it into a tool of control, guilt, and obligation. This isn't about mutual respect or balanced exchange. It's about keeping score in secret and then using that hidden scoreboard to make you feel like you owe more than you ever agreed to give. At first, the manipulator seems incredibly generous. They go out of their way to help you, give you things, support you emotionally, maybe even financially. You're caught off guard. It feels sincere. You start to trust. You might even feel lucky. But soon after, the tone shifts. They start reminding you, explicitly or subtly, of everything they've done. After all I've done for you, this is how you treat me? I guess I just care more than you do. What once felt like a gift now feels like a debt. The trap of distorted reciprocity lies in how unspoken it is at first. You were never told there were strings attached. You never asked for the help to be transactional. But once you accept it, the manipulator changes the rules. Suddenly, they expect unquestioning loyalty, endless emotional labor, immediate favors, silence, submission. And if you resist, you're ungrateful, you're selfish, you're toxic. This tactic is especially damaging because it turns your kindness into a vulnerability. You feel guilty for having needs. You feel wrong for saying no. You begin overcompensating, doing more than you want, giving more than you can just to make things even. But the scales are rigged. No matter how much you give, it's never enough because the manipulator keeps inflating what they've done and minimizing what you do in return. Distorted reciprocity doesn't just control behavior, it corrodes self-worth. It makes you believe that the only way to keep love, safety, or peace is by constantly paying off an invisible emotional debt. You lose the ability to say no without guilt. You stop asking for what you need. You become a servant to a balance sheet that only exists in their mind. You were never in a relationship. You were in a transaction you didn't agree to. One where the price keeps rising and the receipt is always held over your head.
Uvijek ima da je bila morona.
Neuro-linguistic pattern disruption. Neuro-linguistic pattern disruption is a psychological manipulation tactic that interrupts your natural thought and behavior patterns through confusion, contradiction,
Dobro je pa i ovaj
shock,
stanuje sada.
causing a
Prije nije
temporary
stanovao.
mental vulnerability that the manipulator uses to implant suggestions, control decisions, or push boundaries you normally wouldn't cross. It doesn't overpower you through force. It hacks your mind by derailing it. Our brains love predictability. When conversations follow expected rhythms, our subconscious stays in control. But when something suddenly doesn't make sense, a strange question, a bizarre compliment, an emotional pivot that doesn't match the situation, your mental gears grind to a halt. Your conscious mind kicks in, trying to figure out what just happened. And in that brief moment of confusion, you're open. That's where the manipulator strikes. They might say something strange in a moment of tension, like interrupting an argument with a random joke, a deep philosophical question, or even an offbeat compliment. Why do you always look so calm when you're upset? It's kind of beautiful. Now your anger is interrupted. Your mental track derails. You pause. And in that pause, the emotional tone of the interaction shifts, controlled by them. In darker cases, they might use pattern disruption in high emotion settings, delivering a shocking confession, a sudden apology, or an unexpected emotional outburst in the middle of a calm conversation. The chaos shocks your nervous system into a hyper-alert, reactive state, one where you stop thinking logically and start feeling, and they guide you through that chaos with their words, nudging your thoughts exactly where they want. This tactic is often used in cult recruitment, aggressive sales tactics, psychological abuse, and pickup artist strategies. It's not about making sense, it's about scrambling sense long enough to disarm you. What makes this so unsettling is how invisible it is. You walk away from the conversation feeling off-balanced, unsure why you gave in, why you changed your mind, or why you suddenly feel empathy for someone who just hurt you. But the truth is, you didn't decide. They disrupted, and while you were trying to find your footing, they planted the path for you. Strategic self-disclosure. Strategic self-disclosure is a manipulation tactic where someone shares personal information, not to build genuine connection, but to lower your defenses, create false intimacy, and extract trust, secrets, or loyalty from you. It feels like vulnerability, but it's a performance, a carefully timed revelation designed not to connect, but to disarm. At first, it's disarming. You're speaking with someone who suddenly opens up to you. They reveal a painful memory, a dark struggle, a private story. Maybe it's about a toxic ex, a broken family, a traumatic past. It catches you off guard. You feel honored, chosen. You think, they trust me. And so, without even realizing it, you start opening up too. That's the trap. Because the manipulator isn't being vulnerable, they're being strategic. They share just enough pain to appear human, just enough detail to seem real, but not enough to actually make themselves emotionally exposed. Their story has been rehearsed, selectively edited, designed to trigger your empathy and encourage emotional reciprocity. And the moment you start spilling your soul in return, they've won. This tactic is especially effective in early stage relationships, job interviews, political
Nemoj mu
persuasion,
ostavljati jedan
or cult
HP-a,
recruitment.
bog te
You
mazo.
bond with them fast. You skip the normal boundaries. You trust them more quickly than you should. And why wouldn't you? They went first. They bared their soul. But what you don't see is how often they use the same script with others. How many people have been pulled in by the same sob story. What makes strategic self-disclosure so dangerous is how much it feels like love, honesty, or deep connection. It tugs at your compassion and bypasses your logical guardrails. You start seeing this person as safe, as someone who gets you, but it's not you they're interested in. It's your openness, your secrets, your emotional availability, because the more you reveal, the easier you are to influence, manipulate, and control. Eventually, the cracks show. Their stories don't add up. The empathy fades, and the same person who once opened their heart to you uses what you told them against you, not out of passion, out of calculation, because their vulnerability was never about truth. It was a mask used to unlock yours. Ambiguity control. Ambiguity control is a psychological manipulation tactic that thrives on intentional vagueness.
That
It's
was
when someone
fucking
withholds
close.
clarity, avoids commitment, or delivers mixed signals, not because they're confused, but because they want you to be. It's a strategy designed to keep you guessing, overthinking, and emotionally chasing answers that never come. By controlling the level of uncertainty in a relationship or conversation, the manipulator controls you. At first, it may seem like subtle miscommunication. You ask where you stand with them, and they say things like, "Let's just see where it goes," or "I don't like labels." You bring up how their actions hurt you, and they respond, "You're reading too much into it." Their words don't contradict you outright. They just never anchor to anything solid. And that ambiguity, it becomes the leash. Because when someone refuses to define the dynamic, you're left doing all the emotional work. You try to read between the lines. You analyze texts, replay conversations, look for hidden meanings. You shapeshift, you adapt, all to earn the clarity they deliberately deny you. And that's the game. The more unclear they are, the more invested you become in trying to understand them. This tactic gives the manipulator enormous power without ever appearing cruel. They're not yelling, they're not accusing, they're just floating, always slightly out of reach. You can't hold them accountable because technically they never made a promise. They never said, "I love you." They never said, "We're exclusive." They never said, "I care." But they also never said they don't. And so you stay. You stay because of what might be, because of the potential, because of the moments where it almost feels real. And those moments, those fragments of warmth, attention, or affection are just enough to keep you hoping, trying, waiting. What makes ambiguity control so effective is that it feels like your own uncertainty. You think the problem is your anxiety, your impatience, your inability to just go with the flow. But the truth is, you're not lost. You're being kept lost. Because as long as you're stuck in the fog, they never have to show you who they really are. Value extraction framing. Value extraction framing is a psychological manipulation tactic where the manipulator positions every interaction, relationship, or exchange in terms of what you can offer and what they can gain. It's not about mutual benefit. It's about quietly conditioning you to measure your worth by your utility. The unspoken message is clear.
Ma
You
daj!
are only as valuable as what you provide. It starts subtly. They praise you for being useful, selfless, or different from the rest. They say things like, "You always come through when I need you," or "I don't know what I'd do without you." It feels flattering at first. You feel
Jeden
chosen,
govna.
needed. You begin taking pride in your ability to help, fix, or sacrifice. But underneath the surface, a quiet truth takes hold.
Bog te
If I
mazo.
stop being useful, I stop being loved. This framing shifts the relationship dynamic
Na
completely.
vrijeme treba da se
You start
izađe. Znači.
anticipating their needs before your own. You overextend, overgive, and overfunction just to maintain your place in their life. You stop asking for things because you're afraid it will make you seem demanding or high maintenance. They don't have to say it outright.
Fuck off.
You've internalized the rule. Your value is conditional. The manipulator reinforces this by reacting negatively when you assert boundaries or say no. Suddenly, you're not the amazing friend, partner, or employee anymore. You're difficult. You're cold. You're replaceable. They make you feel like a burden for needing rest, space, or recognition. And just like that, you scramble to prove your worth again, not through love, but through service. Value extraction. Framing is especially destructive because it doesn't scream abuse. It whispers unworthiness. You're never directly told you don't matter. You're just slowly trained to believe that your needs matter less than your function, that love must be earned through sacrifice, that peace is kept by producing, fixing, pleasing, performing. Over time, you begin to disappear. Not all at once, but in small, quiet ways. You stop expressing yourself. You stop being messy, real, human. You become efficient, predictable, emotionally available only when it's convenient for them, and they thrive, feeding off your effort, your energy, your silence, while you slowly forget that your value was never meant to be a transaction. Fear then relief technique. The fear then relief technique is a psychological manipulation tactic that jolts you with anxiety, panic, or dread, and then suddenly removes the threat to trigger emotional vulnerability, compliance, and gratitude. It doesn't just influence your behavior, it hijacks your nervous system. And it works because the moment fear is relieved, your brain releases a chemical flood of relief so powerful it makes you more likely to trust, agree, or obey the very person who scared you in the first place. This tactic begins with fear. It could be a threat, a lie, a misunderstanding, or a moment of high tension. A boss says, "We need to talk about your job status right now." A partner says, "I can't do this anymore." A parent goes silent after you confess something vulnerable. The fear sets in fast. You feel your stomach drop, your breath quicken, your thoughts spiral. You brace for impact. And then, just as the fear peaks, it vanishes. "I was just kidding. It's not that serious, don't worry. I was just testing you." That's the relief, and it's designed to make you emotionally collapse into the arms of the person who just made your heart race. In that moment, you're flooded with gratitude, not clarity. You don't question why they scared you. You don't examine the manipulation. You just feel grateful that things aren't as bad as they almost were. And that gratitude creates a twisted sense of loyalty. They feel like a savior, even if they were the source of the threat. This tactic is widely used in interrogation rooms, sales pitches, toxic relationships, and emotional abuse. The emotional roller coaster leaves you too disoriented to resist, too drained to argue. You comply, not because it makes sense, but because you're desperate for the feeling of safety they've made you associate with them. The danger of the fear then relief technique is that it builds dependence. You begin associating your peace with the person who took it away in the first place, and before long, you're not avoiding danger. You're clinging to the illusion of safety, even when you should be running from the one who created the fear to begin with. Reverse mirroring. Reverse mirroring is a subtle but potent psychological manipulation tactic where the manipulator reflects you back to yourself, not to build rapport, but to blend in, disarm you, and gain your trust. Unlike traditional mirroring, where someone imitates your gestures, tone, or energy to create connection, reverse mirroring flips the script. The manipulator adopts your identity to become exactly who you want them to be, not because it's who they are, but because it's how they get inside your mind. It starts with uncanny synchronicity. You talk about a passion, and they love it too. You share a belief, and they already feel the same way. Your humor, your wounds, your worldview, they mirror all of it. You're not just heard, you're seen. You begin to think, no one has ever understood me like this, and that's exactly what they want you to believe. But what's really happening is psychological camouflage. The manipulator isn't bonding with you. They're building a persona out of your own reflections.
Spottaas me ottamo.
The more material they gather. Your language becomes their language. Your emotional rhythms become their mask. It feels like destiny. In reality, it's design. This tactic is devastatingly effective in romantic relationships, sales, cult grooming, and even fake friendships. You bond quickly. You trust faster than usual. You bypass red flags because this person feels familiar. But that familiarity isn't real. It's constructed from everything you've revealed. They haven't shown you who they are. They've shown you who you are, fed back through a polished, seductive mirror. The danger of reverse mirroring is that it builds false intimacy while keeping their true self completely hidden. You fall in love with a reflection. You commit to someone who doesn't actually exist. When their mask eventually slips, when their real behaviors contradict the identity they mirrored, you feel betrayed, confused, even ashamed. You wonder, how could I have been so wrong? But you weren't wrong. You were targeted. The manipulator never showed up to be known. They showed up to be accepted, and the quickest way to earn your acceptance was to become a version of you, not for love, not for connection, but for access, influence, and control. They didn't mirror you to get closer. They mirrored you so you'd never see who they really were. Social proof, hoaxing. Social proof hoaxing is a psychological manipulation tactic that fabricates or exaggerates popularity, approval, or consensus to influence your beliefs, choices, and trust. It exploits one of the most powerful principles of human behavior. If others believe it, it must be true. But in this case, the others are illusions, carefully curated, selectively presented, or outright invented to make you question your instincts and follow the crowd that doesn't actually exist. It starts subtly. The manipulator references vague people who agree with them. Everyone else thinks I'm right. My friends say you're overreacting. No one else has ever had a problem with me. They drop these statements not as facts, but as anchors, and your brain, wired for social survival, starts second-guessing itself. If you're the only one who sees the issue,
please.
Maybe you are the problem. Maybe your perception is off. Maybe you're being unreasonable. But here's the truth. There is often no everyone. There are no friends.
Debilana znači debilna.
There's no silent consensus. There's just you, doubting yourself because of a lie that was made to feel like evidence. Social proof hoaxing is especially effective in group settings or online environments. A manipulator might fake testimonials, reference anonymous support, or align themselves with authority figures who never endorse them. They may surround themselves with people who agree by default, or punish dissent so harshly that silence becomes complicity. They don't need actual credibility. They just need to appear backed by numbers. And once you believe they have the group behind them, it becomes harder to stand your ground. You stay quiet to avoid being the outlier. You conform to avoid isolation. And that's the goal, to make resistance feel socially dangerous. Over time, you may even begin parroting their narrative, just to feel safe, just to belong, just to survive in a world where your truth feels outnumbered, even when it's the only truth that's real. Social proof. Hoaxing doesn't use facts. It uses fear of exclusion, and it works not because you're weak, but because humans were built to follow the crowd, even when the crowd is a ghost. False equivalence. Framing. False equivalence framing is a psychological manipulation tactic that distorts logic by comparing two unlike things as if they are equal in weight, blame, or impact. It's not an argument, it's a trick, a way to blur moral lines, shift accountability, and make you feel like you're just as guilty or just as flawed as the manipulator. It's the art of saying, well, you do it too, even when what they did cut deeper, hit harder, or cross boundaries you never touched. This tactic thrives in conflict. You confront someone for lying, and they respond, "Well, you kept secrets too." You call them out for manipulation, and they fire back, "You're controlling sometimes. Don't act like a saint." It sounds balanced, fair, reasonable, but it's not, because what they're doing isn't taking accountability. It's diluting it, twisting the situation until everything feels gray, until you can no longer tell the abuser from the victim. False equivalence is especially disorienting because it targets your empathy. You want to be fair. You are willing to own your flaws. So when someone flips the script, you pause, you look inward, and while you're busy questioning yourself, they're slipping away from the consequences of their actions. The more you bend to be equal, the more power they regain. This tactic also shows up in toxic relationships where one person crosses a clear line, cheating, gaslighting, or emotionally abusing, and then frames your reaction as equally harmful. "You yelling at me is no better than me lying to you," or "You left the house during the argument. That's abandonment too." The goal is not reconciliation. The goal is neutralization, to make sure no one's held truly accountable, especially not them. What makes false equivalence framing so dangerous is how quickly it erodes your moral compass. You start believing that fairness means shared blame, even when one person clearly crossed the line. You begin softening your voice, holding back your truth, minimizing your pain to be the bigger person, and in doing so, you let them off the hook. This isn't equality, it's emotional sabotage wrapped in the language of balance. They don't want to meet you halfway. They want to drag you down into the mud so they don't have to climb out of it. And if you let them reframe your truth into something just as bad, they win, not because they're innocent, but because they convinced you that no one is. Artificial authority creation. Artificial authority creation is a psychological manipulation tactic where someone fabricates or exaggerates status, expertise, or credibility to gain control, obedience, and admiration without having to earn it. It's not about actually being qualified, it's about appearing powerful enough that others stop questioning, start obeying, and hand over trust they would never give so freely if they knew the truth. This tactic works because people are conditioned to respect authority. From childhood, we're taught to listen to teachers, bosses, doctors, and leaders. So when someone walks into your life with the right tone, the right title, the right image, your brain registers them as someone to defer to. And a manipulator knows exactly how to dress that illusion. They may flash credentials that can't be verified. They may reference vague experience, name drop influential people, or tell you how respected they are in their field. They may adopt the language of psychology, business, religion, or science to sound authoritative, even when what they're saying is shallow, misleading, or completely fabricated. Their confidence becomes your evidence. And once you buy into that authority, the power shifts. You stop challenging their opinions. You start accepting their criticisms. You second-guess your own knowledge, even when you're right. This tactic thrives in toxic relationships, workplace hierarchies, spiritual abuse, and predatory coaching or self-help environments. A manipulator using artificial authority might say things like, "Trust me, I know people like you. You wouldn't understand. I've studied this for years. I'm only telling you this because no one else will be honest with you." They don't give you facts. They give you a throne and sit on it before you realize it's made of air. What makes this tactic dangerous is how quickly it dissolves your confidence. You stop trusting yourself. You defer, comply, obey, and even when your instincts scream that something feels wrong, you override them. Because surely someone with this much authority can't be manipulative, right? But real authority doesn't need to convince you. It doesn't need costume or performance. Only artificial authority does, because its power doesn't come from truth. It comes from the illusion of it, and it only works if you believe the crown is real. Empathy, weaponization, Empathy weaponization is one of the most insidious psychological manipulation tactics because it uses your greatest strength, your ability to care, to feel, to understand, against you. It's the calculated exploitation of your compassion to excuse harmful behavior, avoid consequences, or keep you emotionally trapped. It doesn't break your heart all at once. It uses your heart to break your boundaries piece by piece. The manipulator doesn't scream or demand. They suffer, they cry, they shut down. They tell you about their trauma, their pain, their tragic past in moments when they should be apologizing. When you confront them about the ways they've hurt you, they pivot. You have no idea what I've been through. I'm trying the best I can. I wish you could understand how hard it is for me. And suddenly, you're the one
Previsoko mi ova
strelca
značić.
because now you feel bad for making them feel
Bravo!
bad. This tactic is especially effective because it taps into your humanity. You don't want to be cruel. You do want to understand. So you give them the benefit of the doubt. You excuse their aggression, their neglect, their betrayal, telling yourself they didn't mean it. They're hurting, they're trying, and little by little, you stop expecting accountability. You start making sacrifices for someone who never truly intends to change. Empathy, weaponization is not just emotional manipulation, it's emotional inversion. You, the one being harmed, become the caretaker, the fixer, the protector of someone who keeps dropping emotional bombs and handing you the guilt for the explosion. It makes you feel that walking away isn't just painful, it's heartless. That setting a boundary is being cold. That asking for respect is being selfish. And the more you give, the more they take, because they know that you can't stand the idea of being unkind. They don't need to overpower you. They just need to trigger your compassion, and you'll do the silencing, the justifying, the forgiving for them. This tactic doesn't just trap you in a toxic relationship.
Bravo, promaši ga na kraju samom, jeboti mater svoju.
You begin to wonder if being good means always being forgiven, even when it's destroying you. And
Čovjek se okrene I samo opuca I pogodi.
Not with violence, but with your own goodness turned against you.
Maja.
There are 7 behaviors you've never been taught. And that's why people underestimate you. They make people fear you, even when you don't raise your voice.
Hey there. While the world sleeps and dreams of comfort, you'll be walking into the mind of power itself. Tonight, you won't just rest, you'll change. By the time dawn arrives, something inside you will be different, calmer, sharper, more in control. The hesitation that once slowed you will fade. The need to be understood or approved will drift away like smoke in the wind. You already feel it, the quiet knowing that the world doesn't reward kindness alone, but calculation. That mercy without strength is surrender. That surviving isn't enough. Real peace comes from control of your mind, your emotions, your life. This isn't a normal bedtime story. These are the lessons that built empires and ended them, the same truths that turned men into rulers and rulers into myths. For the next few hours, let these words work through you, slow, steady, cutting away what is weak. Let them remind you that emotions can serve you, that silence can protect you, and that power, true power, belongs to those who stay composed when others break. If this kind of calm strength speaks to you, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if it truly helps you grow. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's powerful to know who else is out there, sharpening their mind while the rest of the world sleeps. So dim the lights, breathe deeply. Let the noise of the day fall away. Let the voice of reason take over. And now we begin, where all rulers are born, in the shadows. Man is not a creature of reason. He is a creature of need. His loyalty bends to his hunger. His morals collapse beneath his fear. And his courage disappears the moment comfort whispers his name. A ruler must begin not by judging men as they appear, but by understanding them as they are. Fickle, ungrateful, deceitful, greedy, cowardly, and desirous of gain. To rule is not to uplift man, but to anticipate his weakness before he reveals it. You do not conquer nations, you conquer the nature that governs them. Most men live not by principle, but by convenience. They swear loyalty when watched, and betray when unseen. This is not corruption, it is instinct. They fear punishment more than they value honor. The ruler who understands this will never be surprised by betrayal, for he has already accounted for it. The wise do not curse the tide for changing. They build ships that move with it. So too must you. Build your plans around human instability. Assume treachery, and every act of faith becomes a gift. Assume loyalty, and every failure becomes your fault. You will meet men who speak with conviction, who promise eternity in their friendship, who kneel with eyes wet with devotion. But watch how quickly devotion fades when power shifts, when profit changes hands, when the scent of loss appears. The crowd cheers whoever stands upon the balcony, not because they love him, but because they fear missing the moment of victory. Admiration is temporary, utility is eternal. To rule men is to understand their uses. A ruler must love neither the crowd nor the courtier. Both are mirrors that distort truth. The crowd demands spectacle, the courtier demands favor. The ruler who seeks affection will find himself surrounded by liars, each smiling as they sharpen the knife behind him. The one who seeks only respect will stand alone, but his silence will command more obedience than 1,000 speeches ever could. Power is not maintained by pleasing others, but by never needing to. Understand this. Men forgive cruelty faster than weakness. They will kneel to a tyrant before they follow a fool. They despise what they pity, and pity what they cannot respect. The leader who bends to emotion becomes the servant of those he governs. Control yourself, and you will control them. Let them see calm when chaos erupts. Let them find no fear in your eyes, no doubt in your tone. In your restraint, they will sense authority. In your silence, they will sense depth. You will become the unmoving center around which their uncertainty revolves. There is a hidden truth in the nature of men. They long to surrender. They crave structure, command, and hierarchy, though they pretend to hate it. Freedom terrifies them, for it exposes their inadequacy. They seek rulers not because they are weak, but because they are tired. They wish to be told what to do by someone who does not tremble. If you can remain calm when others panic, decisive when others hesitate, and indifferent when others plead, they will give you everything they own just to feel safe beneath your certainty. Granted not to the strongest, but to the most composed. To govern well, you must not expect men to be noble. You must expect them to be predictable. The ruler who builds on virtue builds upon clouds. The ruler who builds on fear builds upon stone. Men may love you today and despise you tomorrow, but they will always fear consequences. Fear never forgets. It lingers in the mind, whispering restraint long after affection fades. This is why punishment, when used wisely, is mercy disguised as cruelty. It teaches men the limits of their chaos. It keeps the order they themselves lack the discipline to preserve. In truth, human goodness is not absent. It is simply weak. It requires protection, boundaries, and guidance. Without command, goodness decays into indulgence. Without law, compassion becomes cowardice. The ruler's duty is not to indulge goodness, but to direct it, to harness the small decency that exists within men toward the stability of the whole. A state built on freedom alone is a garden left untended, beauty overrun by weeds. Discipline is the gardener's hand. Observe history, and you will see that every fall of empires begins with sentiment. A generation forgets the harsh lessons of its fathers. It grows indulgent, mistaking comfort for virtue. The ruler becomes lenient, the people become entitled, and soon what was built through discipline collapses through softness. Men forget that peace is born from fear, and that safety is maintained through vigilance. Thus, the ruler who loves his people must sometimes act against their desires, for their desires often lead them to ruin. The ruler must be as a surgeon, cutting to heal, inflicting pain to prevent decay. Modern men, though they live with light instead of fire and speak through glass instead of air, are no different from those who came
Dobro si
before.
vidio prvu
The same
granatu.
instincts burn beneath
Nis
their
mene
inventions.
ospotuo.
They worship power in
To mi
every
je malo
form.
neobično, ali ne veze.
Fame, approval, and yet they pretend to despise
Idemo
those who
sada da
possess it.
vidimo na sredini
They
šta
crave
se
leadership,
dešava.
yet not
KV1 gdje je.
authority. They shout of equality, but dream of superiority. It is not the world that has changed, only the disguises men wear to conceal their hunger. The wise ruler sees through these masks and names each vice by its true nature. Your task is not to hate mankind, but to read it. Study men as you would study a battlefield. Not to pity the fallen, but to understand the terrain. The one who knows human weakness can predict every movement before it occurs. Learn to listen not to what men say, but to what they avoid saying. Learn to observe the slight tremor before betrayal, the over-eager smile before deceit, the sudden silence before ambition. Every soul leaks its truth through hesitation. Train your perception until nothing surprises you. Not love, not loyalty, not treachery. But remember this, while you are studying them, they are watching you. Your every gesture, every delay, every word will be weighed and judged. The ruler who forgets that he too is seen becomes the subject of another's game. You must remain unpredictable. Let your mercy surprise them. Let your anger confuse them. Let your stillness terrify them. The one who cannot be read becomes invincible, for he removes from others the power to prepare. Now, close your eyes and imagine the world beneath your feet. Millions of minds spinning in chaos, each believing they act freely. You will move among them as one who knows the script of their thoughts, the limits of their courage, the price of their loyalty. You will see their motives before they are spoken, and their fear before it finds words. You will not hate them. You will use them as nature uses wind and tide. For to understand the nature of men is not to condemn them, it is to master the currents that carry them. And when you finally understand this, that men are not good or evil, but instruments awaiting the hand that dares to play them, tell me, when you take the throne within yourself, will you rule them with restraint or with precision? Fortune is a storm. She does not favor the righteous or the wise, only the prepared. To those who wait for her smile, she brings ruin. To those who seize her hair while she passes, she gives a kingdom. Men call it luck, the wise call it timing. But I tell you this, it is neither. It is readiness meeting inevitability. Fortune cannot be controlled, but she can be mastered by those who refuse to kneel before her. You must learn to bend the world by force of will, not prayer. The weak trust destiny to guide them. They speak of signs, stars, and fate, as if the heavens concern themselves with their comfort. But the world is deaf to your hopes. The universe does not remember your name. What it does respect, however, is discipline, the relentless hand that shapes events before they can shape them. Fortune may scatter opportunities like coins upon the earth, but only those who rise early, eyes sharp and hands steady, will collect them before others awake. The rest will call it unfair, never realizing that fairness is the illusion of those too lazy to act. Virtue, the quality that separates the ruler from the ruled, is not virtue as men know it. It is not moral goodness. It is strength of spirit, mastery of circumstance, and the ability to impose form upon chaos. Virtue is the will that turns disaster into design. It is the refusal to submit to the unpredictability of life. The man of virtue does not wait for fortune to be kind. He corners her. He strikes before she decides. And when the storm rages, he does not pray for calm. He builds sails that catch the wind. You must learn to see opportunity where others see ruin. Most men run from uncertainty, yet uncertainty is the only field where fortune plays. Those who hide behind comfort never meet her eyes. She does not visit the cautious, for she despises stagnation. She belongs to those who risk, to those who act when others hesitate. This is why kingdoms are built by the reckless few and inherited by the timid many. The founders of empires did not wait for permission. They moved before the world could think to stop them. Do not mistake impulsiveness for virtue. The man who moves without foresight is not bold. He is blind. Virtue acts with calculation disguised as courage. Every move is premeditated, though it appears spontaneous. The ruler must make chaos look like art, inevitability like accident. Let others believe you are guided by luck. It disarms their suspicion. Let them think your victories are chance. They will never prepare for your next strike. Those who believe you are favored by fortune will fear you, for they cannot fight what they think the heavens have chosen. The masses adore stories of chance, for they excuse failure. They speak of bad luck as if it absolves them of weakness. But fortune punishes the idle. She visits the man already in motion. Every act of preparation is a silent invitation to her presence. Clean your weapons before the war begins. Study your enemies before they appear. Guard your mind before betrayal tempts it. By the time fortune turns her gaze toward you, she must find a man already standing, not kneeling. History remembers only those who treated fortune as a rival, not a mistress. Caesar crossed the Rubicon not because he trusted in luck, but because he knew hesitation would but to remove the choice of retreat. Virtue demands audacity, the kind that forces destiny to surrender. There is a moment in every ruler's life when the gods look away. That is the moment you must act. When divine order sleeps, human will reign supreme. Understand that fortune is cyclical, like the turning of seasons. There will be times of favor and times of drought. The fool celebrates in summer, the wise prepares for winter. When fortune smiles, gather resources. When she turns away, endure in silence. Those who panic when she withdraws lose twice. First their composure, then their position. Treat both victory and loss as visitors passing through your gates. Welcome neither too warmly. Both corrupt those who trust them. A ruler with virtue knows that control is never complete. The world will always resist. People will betray. Plans will falter. Storms will...